welcome to another edition of Value My Vote, one-on-one with the candidates. And we're joined today by 9th District candidate, Assistant Professor at Towson University, Mr. John Bullock. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm just right. Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, obviously, as a professor at Towson, assistant professor, education is going to be a big part of your platform. However, you were featured again in the Baltimore Sun article where you did a ride around with the police.
Yes.
A few incidents happened while you were there. It was a hit and run day, obviously, according to Nick Madigan's article in the Sun. So, to the voters, what is your platform coming into the 9th District, and why now?
Well, really, my platform is really tackling all these issues you talked about. You talked about education, you talked about policing. My platform is very simple. We're talking about some basic things, improving services. All right, we're talking about police protection, we're talking about fire, but we're also talking about basic things like having your streets swept on a regular basis, street cleaning, snow removal, some of those basic things, paving streets, potholes, I mean, just the nuts and bolts. Then we're also talking about things like neighborhood revitalization, and that includes a number of things, from transportation to economic development, supporting small businesses, also community development. And then when we're talking about supporting our different segments of the population. So I'm a young man, I have a family, a married man, I have a son. And so I'm looking at supporting families, supporting young people. We talked about education, so our schools, our rec centers, making sure that those are in place to give our young people a good start for the future, but then also making sure that our families feel comfortable staying in the city. So that deals with public safety, that also deals with the education system. And then for our seniors, those who have toiled in the fields for so long, we have to make sure that they go into their golden years with some support. So that means recreation centers for them, support for them in terms of finances, also in terms of services from the city. So we have to cover all bases.
Being a young man, you're 32 years old, as already an assistant professor at Towson University, how would you, as a council person, if elected, tackle the problems that we see in the education department in the city of Baltimore? Obviously, only 15% of the total budget goes to education. We're usually 23rd or 24th, the lowest on the totem pole in Maryland. What would you do to change that dynamic in the city?
Well, you know, education is something that has so many arms and legs to it. I will tell you that we do need to look at our priorities in terms of the amount of the budget is dedicated toward education. But let's not fool ourselves here that this is a city council election. It's not a school board election. And so a lot of people will talk about the schools. And even though the city council does have a role in the schools, there's something the state is involved in. In terms of funding for schools, in terms of curriculum and all those kinds of things. So at the local level, we can support schools. We can support by at least making sure that the proper amount of budgeting is going toward our schools, talking about facilities, talking about just the support system for families. Education does not exist by itself. We have to think about the communities that people come from, the family structures there. And if those family structures are not there, those opportunities are not there in the community for jobs, then we're going to see those broken families and we're going to see lower educational outcome. So for me, it's taking the education that I've been blessed to receive, one, to push other people to higher education, to get those skills, to come back and use them on behalf of the people.
Now, 1997, for those who know, began the city-state partnership in education. Before that, the city actually had full control of the schools. Do you support this current city-state partnership or full control by the state or the city?
I will tell you this, and we've talked a lot in the city about a school board, an elected school board, what that means for local control and accountability. I'm definitely one who looks at least having some elected positions, if not a hybrid. I mean, it may not be all elected, but at least have some local voice that can be held accountable. Oftentimes, we don't know who do we go to at the local level to advocate for schools. A lot of it seems to happen behind the scenes. One thing that I want to push forward, not only in this race, but in our city as a whole, is transparency. People have to know who do they hold accountable when things don't go right. So I think that the partnership, that's fine, but I think we need to make sure that we're having local control and local accountability, even if we share some roles and responsibilities.
You're running in a district, which is the 9th, that has the most out of the 47,000 plus vacant houses in the city of Baltimore. What do you think is the better plan to be able to tackle, or even what is the Bullock plan to be able to tackle the vacant housing problem that we have in the city of Baltimore?
Well, you know, the city is always trying to attract residents. Now, obviously, we've lost over about 20,000 people since our last census. So we see that there's an out migration in some neighborhoods. In terms of getting people into those houses, we need to make sure that the communities have a role in this process. So some have talked about the Mayor's Vacant and Values program, other programs that have existed. Don't want to knock those, but what I will say is that we need to make sure that we provide avenues in those programs for community residents, whether that be nonprofit organizations, whether it be community organizations, to take ownership of those buildings. You have some buildings that have been vacant for 20, 30 years, and nothing's been happening with those buildings. And so it's just a drain on the city. It's a drain on the neighborhoods. So whether it's a dollar house, whether it's at some nominal value that we allow these community associations to purchase these buildings, that's one side of it. The other side, since we talk about our young people, opportunities, job preparation and training, why not have some of our young people, whether they be in vocational programs in the high schools, or whether they be out of work, young adults, or even people into their 40s who need jobs, why don't we allow an opportunity for them to work on those houses? They're getting job training, on-the-job training, that they can make them more marketable to work on other jobs in terms of home rehab, construction, and things of that nature. So I think we do it a couple ways. One, we look at those houses, we try to get them to community residents, because oftentimes they feel locked out of the process. And then we also allow for our communities, our young people, to be involved in this process and take ownership of it. And I would love to put some of our families into those homes, not necessarily as renters, but as homeowners that are going to increase the houses are going to increase in value, but they're also going to increase their intergenerational wealth and be able to pass it along to our future generations.
Okay. Speaking of future and past generations, you're running against a political dynasty, so to speak, in this district. The Welch name. I mean, Agnes served for 27 years. Her son took over past 100 days or so, Pete. So you're running against that, and also 9 other candidates, 7, 8, 9 other candidates that are in the race that choose to jump in before the deadline. How has that been an obstacle, or has that been kind of, I guess, enlightening to you? Has it been easier when you've been going to community meetings, door to door? How are you welcomed by that?
Well, I will tell you, it's a challenge, but it's a challenge that I welcome. Many people, when I talk to them around the community, are not very satisfied with what they see. We can be sure that political dynasties don't necessarily serve the people. So just because you've sat in an office or you've been close to an office doesn't necessarily make you the best person. So when I go around, I just share who I am. I tell my life story. I tell how I got to this point and what I want to do. And you'd be amazed how many people have been very supportive of it, that they want to see fresh ideas. They want to see younger people being involved and stepping up to the plate. So oftentimes people will talk about a younger generation and say that we're not doing what we're supposed to do, we're not taking the ball. Well, I'm here to grab the baton. And oftentimes people don't want to pass the baton, so that means we have to take the baton and run with it, because we have to go forward. So I take it as a challenge, I take it as a welcome challenge, but I've gotten a lot of support in this effort, definitely.
Speaking of which, and the kind of, I said, elephant in the room, things have been going around. We've been hitting the streets, talking to people, analysts, as well as the voters. What makes John Bullock, you've been in this town for about 5 years, compared to anybody else in this race, in the 9th district, what makes the voter that's watching this want to vote for you other than before the other candidates that are in the race?
Okay, well, one, I would say I'm the most qualified and most committed. So yes, I bought my house 6 years ago, and as soon as I got there, I jumped in feet first into the neighborhood. I'm always working, whether that be in my neighborhood association where I'm the vice president, also in my church, I stay committed. But the biggest reason I would say is that we have to put people in elected office who actually know what they're talking about, know what they're doing. So for me, it's not just about being an academic and having some sort of knowledge about this, it's about the practice. So I have both the knowledge base, the broad knowledge base, and the broad experience to be able to bring that to bear for the people. The reason why our communities oftentimes don't get things is we have people in position of power that don't understand the role they're supposed to play. If you're in city council, that means that you're creating policy, you're creating legislation that's going to affect people's lives. And so being in and around politics, understanding how government works, I'm the only person in the race who is a trained city planner. So when we talk about a vision for our community, what are we talking about? How do we put those nuts and bolts together? So my experience in economic and community development and transportation, working as a transportation planner. So when you have projects like the Red Line that are slated to come through the community, a lot of people worried about that. But how do we allay their fears? Part of that is us being at the table. So I've been behind the scenes working with the station advisory committees, seeing how the plans are coming together, and being that voice, that strong voice for the 9th District. So we really need to have people downtown who can not only speak as a resident, but also bring some expertise to bear so that we don't get the game run on us. Oftentimes our communities, they're losing because they have ineffective or weak leadership. So one thing that you would definitely get from me is strong leadership, a strong voice, one that can articulate the interests of the community. And I dare anyone to say that they were going to out-argue me, they're going to outwork me, or they're going to outthink me when it comes to policy. I'm willing to touch people on the streets, but also willing to get the job done at City Hall.
If they like what they hear, they want to get more about John Bullock, how can the voters themselves get in contact with you?
Well, I make myself as accessible as possible. You can definitely reach me at bullockforcouncil.com. You can also reach me at 410-953-9575. You can also reach me at bullockforcouncil@gmail.com. So if you can't give me any of those places, you'll see me in the streets, and I want to make myself as available as possible. I'm here to serve the people.
Professor John Bullock, candidate for the 9th District, thank you for coming on, sharing your time, sharing your vision, and running for candidacy. We wish you all the best.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you. And we'll be back with more of Value My Vote.